Starting. This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Bob backs up his hard drive. How interesting. Eve has barnacles on her hard drive. That's even more interesting.
I can attest to that.
Yep. Barb sees faces. I'm reading that right. Faces, not feces. And Tim. Hi, I'm your host, Brian Gregory.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
Hi, Brian.
How you doing?
Good.
That's
You're okay.
You okay? Hey, welcome everybody to the show. We're gonna do a thing here, and you can watch. Okay.
Oh,
Hi.
I forgot to look at this movie.
Well, I just started it, so you haven't been able to see
He was
much.
being tricky, so you couldn't guess it in advance.
This one I think is going to be hard. Anyway, this is the Virtual Skeptics. You're watching. Thanks for tuning in. Let me introduce these guys. First up, we have Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor, and lovely hat wearer.
Yes.
Eve Siebert, editor and blogger
Featureless.
at Skeptical Humanities, and contributor to Skepticality Insight at skeptic.com. This is Barbara Drescher, former psychology instructor and blogger for ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to skeptical projects such as Insight, without an S, at skeptic.com, and the odds must be crazy.
And it's a little too easy, not too hard. Sorry. Already got it.
What? Huh?
Got it while you were talking.
Got it already? Really?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
not fair. Tim, unfortunately, is
In
evaporated.
an undisclosed location.
I suspect he is stuck in Atlanta traffic and should be. No, I'm not going to be bitter. Not going to be bitter. Not going to be bitter. We're going to do
He
some
may be
stuff. And if you want to get
interviewing for
involved, what?
Secretary of State.
Huh?
He
Yes.
could be,
No, I think it's Department of the Interior. No. No, not likely. He would definitely be something he's good at, like medical.
Wasn't Ted Kaczynski nominated for Secretary of the Interior?
No, I
He
don't.
was a
maybe?
tech czar.
What was Kanye West being nominated for? I just
Douche of the year.
randomly show up and I don't know. Anyway,
I have a feeling that he may be the only one who will show
UN
up to
ambassador.
perform for the.
well, you know, they have at
inauguration.
least two other acts.
I know.
Yeah.
There's a gazillion country singers that would kill to do it, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, it's hard to beat
Chachi.
Kid Rock. So
Ugh.
Kid Rock, Ted Nugent.
Yeah,
and-
God, yeah.
Victoria Jackson, do a little stand-up.
Yeah.
Oh, dear Lord.
Anyway, if you're watching the show and you want to get involved in this shenanigans, or if you have anything, that would cheer us up, because the world sucks right now, tweet it with hashtag Virtual Skeptics, or you can chat with us on that cute little YouTube chat thing, which I am gonna try to pay attention to. Other than that, just I don't know, yell at the screen. Maybe that'll work. Anyway. Trivia question. We usually have a trivia question every week, and unfortunately, the guy who is really good at the trivia questions, and we really miss the trivia questions that he gives us, hasn't given us a trivia question this week. So, yet again, it's a mystery trivia question week. We have a question. We're just not going to tell it to you, and you answer it, and we'll give you credit if it's right. How about that? Also, if you figure out what the video is behind me, please let me know. I will definitely give you credit for that. Moving right along. Up first this week, Barbara's faces.
That's funny, because I was almost going to talk about toxoplasmosis,
Really?
which is
Not
related to
picking on
feces, but I decided not to. No. Decided not to talk about that because it was overly complicated and just a pain in the ass. Instead, I'm going to talk about this really interesting piece that I saw on Psychology Today.
Woot.
And normally, one thing, just a little caveat about Psychology Today. You gotta, some of it's really good. They have some good columnists, and I'm talking about the online blog like thing.
Yeah. Okay.
they have some good writers. I mean, Scott Lilienfeld writes for them sometimes. There are some really good pieces on it. But in general, I have to wonder sometimes who the hell they get to write for these things, because some of it is just absolute crap. This is a really interesting piece, and it's written by somebody who teaches. And this is a really interesting, I really like the idea. I like the fact that he talks about it in a very casual manner. It's not an article about it's not a journal article about the research, and it's not about the journal article about the research. It's about some research that one of his students did. But the research itself, I do have to wonder why the man is teaching and supervising research, because the research itself is really bad, but it has good potential. So what this is about, it's about pareidolia and autism.
Ooh.
Which is, it makes total sense if you know anything about autism. Because autism, of course, is a social deficit. And we know this for several reasons.
So it's not just one thing, though, is it? It's
the autism spectrum. It is not just one thing, because the social. One thing to keep in mind about any sort of deficit is it's almost never one thing, and that's because our brains are very complex, and social interaction is such a core part of being a human being.
Yeah.
It's such a major part of our survival, our interactions, our interactions with the world are often with each other. It is such a huge part of what we are as animals that it can't be just one thing if it's that, but the one of the major the marker of, or the core of autism is a deficit in social interactions. Of course, it ranges, the deficits range from highly functioning to mental retardation, which of course has lots of deficits in learning, deficits in thinking, and so forth. There's problems with hypotheticals, things like that. One of the interesting things, actually, I should just talk about this before I bring this up. There are arguments about the social deficit hypothesis that strict behaviorists used to bring up. They used to say that autism is just a problem of, it's some other sort of a problem, and they just simply can't answer the right questions. So there are one of the tests of, or one of the things that we learned about autism is there's something called the Sally Ann paradigm, and this is just one. There's lots of these types of problems that we give people. The Sally Ann paradigm is basically you have Sally and you have Ann, and let's say Sally is holding a teddy bear, and there's a box and there's a basket in the room with Sally and Ann, and Sally puts the teddy bear in the basket, and then she leaves the room. And while she's gone, Anne takes the teddy bear and moves it from the basket and puts it in the box. Sally comes back into the room. Where will she look for the teddy bear?
So I mean, I would obviously say, well, she'd look for the last place she put it. So
in the basket, right?
How well does she know Anne and her sneaky behaviors?
This would be relevant if we're talking to an adult, but it's not when you're talking to a 3-year-old or a severely autistic person. So the 3-year-old, the 3-year-olds, yes, but they haven't learned the lesson from it yet. 3-year-olds would then usually answer in the box, because that's where the bear is. So do severely autistic people.
Yeah.
So out of this and several other thought problems like it, there's box of crayons and stuff like that, come out that way, and the idea is that this supports the concept that theory of mind is at play. We know that children don't develop theory of mind, which is basically the idea, the empathy, of understanding that another person's mind has not grasped, they're not grasping the concept of seeing through another person's eyes or thinking of another person's mindset. And as they mature around the age of 4, we start to develop theory of mind, 3 or 4. But autistic people have a deficit in theory of mind. Okay, so this is very, very basic stuff. It's clearly a lot more complex than this, but this is very basic idea. And we know that, behaviorists would argue that, well, that's it's not theory of mind. All you know is that they can't answer the question correctly. And it could be just, a concept of not understanding hypotheticals, but they do understand hypotheticals. And here's one of the ways that you demonstrate that it is a social problem and not simply a problem of not being able to, not understanding the question. If you then take the same Sally Ann paradigm and you replace Sally with a camera. So you're just talking about Anne here. Anne has a teddy bear. She puts it in the basket and she takes a picture of it. And she's got one of those Polaroid cameras that, spits out the little picture and you got to wait a couple minutes for it to develop. Mm-hmm. And she sets that down and then she picks up the bear and she puts it in the box. When that picture develops, where will the bear in the picture be? Suddenly, the 3-year-old still answers in the box. The autistic person now answers correctly in the basket because they understand the hypothetical. They understand that the camera caught the picture of the bear in the basket. What they're lacking is Sally's theory of mind, or the theory of Sally's mind, or the framework of Sally's mind. So it is a social interaction problem, and we know lots about how that manifests. We know things like autistic people tend to, if they're looking at, say, a painting of somebody or a picture of somebody, most people tend to look at the person's eyes or at their face. And what you see when you track eye movements is autistic people don't tend to do that. Their eyes do not linger on the face or the eyes the same way that a normal, a non-autistic person would. And that's a pretty well-established phenomena. So we know this. And so this person's student actually came up with this great idea to use pareidolia and to see how they respond to pareidolia. So if you bring up slide, I've got a couple of slides of faces.
Ooh, I like these.
So yeah, I like this one. I like the eggs.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's clearly a robot face there. So
I was thinking alien, but okay.
Nope, that's a robot face.
My favorite is Creepy Tree, though.
Alien robot.
I love Creepy Tree.
Yeah, Creepy Tree is pretty damn creepy.
That tree's starting to fight. That's like, I'm going to fight you. That's a fighting tree.
Although Shocked Building is pretty good, too.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I like the way the eyes are off to the side, so it almost looks like a Picasso. But it's so they used, if you bring up the next slide, they used some of the more commonly seen ones. I would have preferred them to use ones that were not as common. Yeah, I do too. The tongue and everything. But those are the first ones that you'll see if you Google them on Google. So that's one of the first mistakes they made, is they used commonly viewed, commonly seen versions.
So which one of those electric sockets would you rather use?
Of course, yeah.
The angry,
the happy one or the angry one? I don't know, because you kind of want to shove something in the angry one's face.
Shut up.
You've got issues.
Yeah, I do. It's been a crappy year. What can I say? Yeah. Not so much for me, but a crappy few months. Sick.
I'm going to replace all the sockets in my house with crunchy ones.
Yep, at least for a while, 4 years maybe.
No.
So anyway, so they came up with this idea of testing how they recognize these things. And so they had access. This is one of the reasons that this piece bothers me a little bit. It's a great idea, it really is. And it could have been easily well designed. And they had access to a clinical population. And so they kind of wasted some resources, in my opinion. So, but what they did is they showed these along with some other pictures, probably half and half, although they don't actually say, because there's no methods section, because this isn't a
Peer-reviewed.
peer-reviewed article. Yeah, it's not a research report. But they had a what they called a representative clinical population in a public health disability service here in Ireland. They used their baseline comparison was a traditionally developing folk, which is, normal people, and a group of ASD folks, so people on the spectrum. A series of objects, real faces, and objects that might be interpreted as faces. And so there's actually, they should have had, there were 18 pictures of objects that look like faces or could be interpreted as faces. And hopefully they had 18 of the others, 18 of each of the others, but we don't know. And they were asked to respond as fast as possible when they saw something that looked like a face. So they recorded the reaction times and they recorded the false alarms, just to weed out the people who, weren't doing it, right, or were just bashing the indicator as fast as possible and so forth, or clicked on non-existent possibilities, as they called them. And then they compared the two. This is where it becomes a problem. If you'll bring up the graph, they found exactly what you would expect to find. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. My favorite one, Grandma Caterpillar. Grandma Caterpillar putting on lipstick. Yeah, he's my favorite. I like Grandma Caterpillar.
Reminds me of that old Disney show. My kids are the right age. Roly Poly
Yeah.
Roly.
Yep.
It looks very much.
Yeah, my kids are the right age for that too. Okay, so here's the graph. The red line is the typically developing, and the dotted line is the ASD. Now, this is a strange graph. Well, it's not really strange because it's a graph of each object that looks like a face over time. So they presented them each in the same order to everyone and so this is over time. So they all improved with it over time, which you expect an improvement in the task over time.
So the improvement is actually very similar.
But the improvement is similar. The what's the word I'm looking for? The increase anyway. The improvement is similar. The tilts of the lines are similar. But you'll notice the ASD people are significantly below the typically developing people. Actually, I did a little math.
Ew.
And because they didn't give enough information to really do an analysis, but I did look at all the dots on the graph and did an overall average, which is much more important. And the ASD people average 41.3%, and the typically developing average 68.1%. So they both improved over time. However, one did much better than the other. And that is well in line with the research that shows that they don't, process faces in the same way, that it's not as important to them or not as interesting or not as well developed. But this research could have been done so much better. Oh my God, it could have been done so much better. For one thing, the order of the presentation was the same for every person. That's a big no-no. Yes, you're interested in order effects, and yes, they could have still analyzed the order effects or the effects over time, if that's what they were interested in, or the improvement over time, without doing it that way. What they should have had was a random order for everybody. That is very, very easy to do these days, especially if it's done on a computer. You just simply randomize the order. It should have randomized the order for all of the pictures. I have no idea how they ordered the pictures, whether they had, an object followed by a face followed by an object that could be interpreted as a face. I mean, maybe they chose a random order for all of the pictures and then gave everybody the exact same order.
And it's not really.
But that's it, it's bad. It's still bad. It's bad. What you want to see is you want to average across all of the you want that variation in there, because people could have just, there's always the possibility that this picture was just easy for everybody and this picture was, you need to be able to see that. The other problem, the biggest problem, was they didn't do any analysis, much less do the right analysis. They should have analyzed.
Today. Come on.
This is true, but it's not Psychology Today. It's the person that wrote the piece who is a working psychologist. He's at least teaching, if not doing research. I can't believe there was absolutely no analysis done. There's not even an analysis to determine whether the differences between the two groups are statistically significant, and that's really simple to do.
Right.
But what they really should have done is, first of all, they should have analyzed reaction time. That's much more interesting and much more sensitive.
What exactly is
to what you're getting at? 41 to 68. 41.3 to 68.1.
What is the percentage of?
Percentage of getting it correct. They're supposed to answer as quickly as possible. So you're assuming that they are trying to answer it as quickly as possible. And what you really want. Yeah, what you really want is reaction time, and then you analyze the reaction time only of the correct answers. And then you do something else with the correct answers and the false alarms and the false positives and so forth. You do something called signal detection analysis. Signal detection analysis weeds out your response bias. So if one person is more likely to respond yes to something, it takes that into consideration, or it ignores it, so that it's not part of the math. There could be people in there are more likely to respond yes or more likely to respond no in whether they're seeing a yes, whether they're seeing a face or not.
So you can see that in the overall
and that
response.
That ends up in that washes out in the noise. In a general is the statistically significant difference thing, it would wash out in the noise. But if you want something, you really want information, you do a signal detection analysis, which takes that into consideration and actually ignores it, because it's not. It becomes what you end up seeing is how detectable the face was, rather than having this all this noise in there. So it's much more significant. You can weed out the bias and actually look at how detectable these faces were to typically developing people and to people with on the spectrum. That is the way
it was a good idea. So it was a good idea, but poorly executed.
It's a great idea. Yeah, the research idea, the idea to study autism using pareidolia for faces, I think is a brilliant idea. It's probably not the first time it's been done, but it's very appropriate, and I think it's very interesting. It just needs to be done right.
Yeah.
And if it was done right, it would be a lot more interesting.
So this was a grad student's project?
He just said student. It's probably an undergrad project.
It sounds like an undergraduate project that
got attention because it was a good idea.
And that's it. And so it ended up in the professor's blog.
That the teacher wrote about.
Well,
yeah. It's basically, it's not really a blog, but it's the professor's way of getting it out there. It's sort of bloggish in that.
And had it been something that was like headline worthy, it would have ended up on all the news services.
Oh yeah, whether it was good or not.
Yeah.
It is headline worthy. It is. It's just not something that got picked up a lot, I don't think.
What I mean is that some teenage kid couldn't do a clickbait headline.
Yeah. Yeah, it just says a student came to me. She liked the use of pareidolia, but she wanted to use it to study autism.
So it's the kid's idea.
Now, Autism isn't really my field, and any scientist is wary of venturing outside their expertise. However, she was confident that we could bring it to a proper expert for technical bits to do with autism. And I think that's all great. All of that's great. The problem is they went through all this trouble. They went through IRBs. They did all of this work. And none of that is reflected here. They clearly executed it wrong, because he has the graph showing that, they presented in the same order every time. And that's just bad, because now you can only generalize to the pictures presented in that order. And it's a simple fix. It's a very simple fix. And there's absolutely no analysis. Now, it's possible that the student did good analysis. I don't know, but it's just wasted resources, I think, because they did go through a lot of trouble. So this isn't just a class project. They went through IRB and everything. This is probably an independent study project, maybe an undergrad.
Yeah.
No, let's hope the student learns something.
It just, the things that bug me about stuff like this is I have to wonder, if you're teaching psychology and you're overseeing research, you should know at least some of the basics about research.
Well, I mean,
you don't.
Could it have been somebody who does clinical psychology and was their advisor or something? I mean, it maybe
could
somebody
be,
who's not.
but even in clinical psychology. Even clinical psychology, you're supposed to know research. There isn't an undergrad program in this country that's worth its salt, at least. I don't know of any that don't require fundamental research as an undergrad. And then when you go to grad school, you're supposed to learn even the finer points. And this is stuff that order effects are something you're supposed to learn as an undergrad. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. The analysis stuff, the signal detection theory stuff, which is more Bayesian, and that can be a little more complicated. Not everybody learns that, but basic statistical analysis they do, and that wasn't done here. And if you don't know somebody, you get somebody. So they got an autism expert, but not anybody to actually help them design the research.
What school is this?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't look at his bio.
Just curious. My son's looking at schools. It's like, so maybe he doesn't want to go to this school. No.
He is a researcher at the School of Applied Psychology, University of College Cork in Ireland.
Oh, so my son's not going there.
Published in the field of human sexual behavior as well as other topics.
And I don't think my son's going to study psychology. So
applied psychology, you should freaking know better, because applied psychology includes human factors, and that's supposed to be that's usually very intense research methods stuff.
So that's very strange then.
Yeah, it is.
To invest
Great idea, though.
the resources, but not go the last mile with the design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, and this is basics. Yeah, like I said, this is basic stuff. The analysis, maybe, but it's basic.
It's very, very basic.
Yes.
That much is clear. It's very basic. Thanks, Barb. That was interesting and very face-like. I don't know. Just something I said. Up next, Eve is going to talk about the barnacles on her hard drive.
Yeah, not really.
Already.
But barnacles. So, okay, so I have to sort of make a confession here. Otherwise, this isn't going to make any damn sense. But have you ever just, you read something on the interwebs, for instance, and
Never.
Often it's Wikipedia, and then you end up down this crazy rabbit hole of reading other things.
Yes.
This is a whole area.
Why I stay away from YouTube.
Sort of unlikely reading and research. So tonight I'm going to inflict one of my adventures in digressions on you.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
So I was reading Doubtful News, as one does, and there's a story about a sea monster that's not a sea monster. A few days ago, New Zealanders reportedly flocked to Muriwai Beach, which I looked up how to pronounce that and then forgot. So they looked flocked there to see the Murawai monster. If you could bring up the first slide of the monster.
It seems to be
White.
No, this is going to be where Tim was.
Or something.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
There we
Ew.
go.
Alright,
So, yeah, so there's
that's
the monster.
a monster.
The hell is that?
Well, we'll get to that. The monster was discovered
What the
by
heck is that?
Melissa Doubleday, and she posted pictures of it on Facebook seeking identification.
More importantly, or more precisely, what is on that?
Well, yeah.
What is all over that? That's what's grossing me out.
Right. Oh, and there's actually video of it too available. That's but the identification came very quickly. It's a massive piece of driftwood, and it really does appear to be huge. And it's covered in gooseneck barnacles or goose barnacles.
Oh,
Goose.
Although other suggestions included sea monster with dreadlocks, beach Christmas tree, and alien pod time capsule.
A dinosaur femur.
With danglies. Because the barnacles were alive and
I
going.
don't want to know about the danglies.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all fine and settled. But Sharon also mentioned the legendary connection between goose barnacles and barnacle geese. If you can bring up the next slide. That is a barnacle goose conducting a symphony.
I was just going to say that.
It's true.
It's surprising that they can actually do that.
Yeah.
And he's dressed for the occasion too.
There are trumpeter swans in the back.
Yeah. But at any rate, according to this legend, barnacle geese don't mate, they don't nest, they don't lay eggs. They grow from trees or wood in the water.
What?
Yeah, we'll get more into it in a minute. While the etymology of barnacle is a bit of a mystery, it was first actually used to refer to the bird and was later applied to the shellfish, from which the bird supposedly springs. The Oxford English Dictionary, and the Middle English Dictionary don't even mention that the word seems to have existed in Old English. The Dictionary of Old English defines Birnetta as ? Barnacle goose. It's from an Old English gloss of Latin, and the Latin text, quote, perhaps refers to the belief that the barnacle goose was produced from a barnacle, according to the Dictionary of Old English. At any rate, the Latin references cuttlefish and other sea animals, and then some bird. The word may or may not be etymologically related to barnacle, but according to the OED, the form barnata for barnacle exists in medieval Latin, specifically Anglo-Latin, though they suggest that might be a bad spelling. But I wonder if barnata is the same word as Old English bernata. Anyway, the earliest reference to the legend that most sources, including Wikipedia and an old post by John S. Wilkins on Science Blogs, cite is from Geraldus Cambrensis, or Gerald of Wales, a Norman Welsh cleric of the 12th and 13th centuries. And Gerald says barnacles originate as gummy excrescences from pine beams floating on the waters, and then, enclosed in shells to secure their free growth, they hang by their beaks like seaweeds attached to the timber. Eventually, they either fall into the water or take flight. If you can bring up the next slide. This is a 16th century engraving of them falling from a tree into the water.
Are you sure that's not body snatchers just using geese?
Yeah, or it looks like Audrey 2 vomiting chickens.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much what it is. Further, Gerald says, I have often seen with my own eyes more than 1,000 minute embryos of birds of this species on the seashore, hanging from one piece of timber, covered with shells and already formed. No eggs are laid by these birds after copulation, as is the case with birds in general. What he's right about birds in general.
The rest of it.
Yeah, the rest of it is a little question.
Not so much. Yeah.
Now, don't think too harshly of Gerald. In other areas, he's on much firmer ground. He's an interesting writer. He was an important scholar. Just not doesn't have a really firm grasp on geese. But he's not alone, and he wasn't even the first to mention the legend. One of the, as I said, the Old English gloss of Latin seems to refer to barnacle geese coming from barnacles. There's also an Old English riddle, one of many riddles preserved in the Exeter book, and that seems to be about barnacle geese. According to Michael Alexander's translation, it goes thus: "My beak was in a narrow place. Beneath and by me flowed the flood. Far below ocean's whelming streams was it that I grew, covered by waves, a wandering spar of wood, the only near neighbor of my body. I was full of life when I left the embracing wood and water, wore my black. Among my equipment was much white also. When the air took me and tossed me up living, the wind from the wave, widely it bore me over Seal's path, say what I am called." And most people agree that it's a barnacle goose. However, not everyone in the Middle Ages believed the legend. Both Albertus Magnus and Roger Bacon, who were younger contemporaries of Gerald's, questioned it. Albertus said that he had seen the birds mate and nest, although if this is true, he must have seen barnacle geese that had been domesticated or kept in captivity, or hybrids between barnacle geese and domestic geese, since barnacle geese don't mate where he was. They mate in the Arctic. So why did people believe this? Wilkins seems to blame religion, but I think he's wrong. Gerald does use the geese to make a religious point, but the belief in the legend doesn't seem to be predicated on his religious belief. And all the oldest known examples of the legend that I've seen seem to be secular, and they all seem to come from the British Isles, apparently. Now, barnacle geese don't breed in the British Isles. As I said, they breed up north in like Iceland. So they never did see them nest or mate, or they never saw barnacle goose eggs because they don't do that in Britain. Secondly, the crustaceans are thought to resemble.
Or likely to find a coconut.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who never mind.
On the
What is
carrying
the average
capacity of a
wingspeed of a
swallow,
laden
really.
barnacle
Well,
goose?
which swallow? But anyway, the crustaceans are thought to resemble the geese. If you can bring up the next slide, which shows a close-up of the barnacles on that sea monster.
Yeah.
So they're hanging
Oh,
from
God.
the thing
They
that
look
they look like what?
horrid dicks.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Oh, my God.
But there's a reason they're called gooseneck. The yucky thing they're hanging from is supposed to look like a gooseneck. They're black and white the way
Yeah, that's
the geese are black and white.
Okay, I can see that. It's a physical
It's
similarity.
pareidolia, I
Yeah.
guess.
Apophenia?
Shh.
Okay. Although some people did question the belief, it actually stuck around for quite a long time.
Like a barnacle.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Although, again, Wilkins blames religion for the belief's continuation. And by the way, also religion clearly seems to be bad. So he thinks it seems to blame religion for the continuation and the origin. But I think that's kind of his own bias and his ignorance about certain matters in the Middle Ages. For one thing, Albertus Magnus was a Dominican friar and a bishop, and he's a saint. Roger Bacon was a Franciscan friar. So being religious didn't stop them from thinking, it's stupid. And as I said, the only English poem is secular, and Gerald seemed to base his belief on his own observation, though he made a religious point about it. That said, the barnacle goose did present religious people with certain dietary conundrums, or conundra, if you prefer. Gerald mentions that some Irish bishops and other clerics had taken to eating barnacle geese on fast days, considering them to be not flesh because they don't come from flesh. He disagrees, pointing out that had one eaten Adam's flesh, although he was not born of flesh, one would still be eating flesh.
What?
Also, ick. Adam came from clay.
Well, no, it just sounds to me like they're that kind of theological nitpicking, like where you have the in the name of the rose, where you have the conclave of all the great minds coming together, and then they're there to decide whether or not Jesus owned his clothes.
Yeah, that's,
and you're just like,
probably not entirely fair either. But the thing is, with the monks, it like gives them, or the bishops, people think of fasting as being something that happened on Fridays or in Lent, but there are a lot of fasting days in the Middle Ages. All of Advent, that's fasting. So classify.
They weren't that fast.
Classify a barnacle goose as a fish, basically a shellfish, and you've just got open things up for yourself. Especially if you're a bishop and you can sort of afford that sort of thing. But wait, it gets worse. So there's the issue about whether it could be eaten during fasts or not for Catholics. Meanwhile, Jewish people had a different problem. If barnacle geese were birds, they could be eaten like any other bird as long as they were ritually slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. However, since they supposedly grew from trees, some Jewish authorities regarded them as, wait for it, fruit.
What?
So I guess
it
you
makes
could just peel off the feathers and eat them raw. I'm not sure I'd encourage that. I imagine geese protest when you just try to peel off their feathers, for one thing. And yet other authorities considered them shellfish because they were thought to come from shells. Or at any rate, they felt that the birds grew on trees, and birds that grow on trees are creeping things. So either way, shellfish or creeping things, they're unclean animals and therefore completely a no-no.
It sounds to me like someone made up the story just to fuck with them.
Just to be able to.
Well, but I found this stuff in the Encyclopedia Judaica, which says, as late as 1862, R. Bernard Issachar Dov Ilovi, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, in New Orleans quoted a conflict of authorities whether it might be eaten and vigorously denounced those who would permit it.
Okay. And
I have nothing else to say that could possibly top that, so I'm just gonna stop there. So that's where my brain ended up going after seeing a nice little story about a sea monster that was just a big giant piece of wood.
You were bored today, weren't you?
Yeah.
This barnacles are hideous.
See, I'm more interested in how we'd pair a wine with this, because that shellfish.
How about a tiny bottle of gluten-free vodka?
Well, see, that goes with anything. Pretty much. Actually, it makes most anything taste better. A little more than just one, though. Anyway, I learned something about barnacle geese today.
Good God.
Yay.
That is the grossest thing. Can you please put it down? Take it down.
Yeah, it is pretty horrible.
This big picture of disgusting clam penises, according to Bob. Okay. Thanks, Eve. That was fascinating. Oh.
Or weird, just weird.
Yeah, it's fascinating in a weird way. Up next, Bob. I don't want to hear about your hard drive, man.
Okay, that's fine. So 2016, huh?
Yay.
This year can eat a bag of dicks. Not a good year.
Goose barnacles.
Or goose barnacles, right? A tree of goose barnacles.
Tree.
It wasn't a good year. We lost a lot of really cool people. We lost Prince, Alan Rickman, David Bowie, John Glenn, Muhammad Ali, Neil Armstrong again, Aleppo, and Democracy, just to name a few notable losses.
Yeah.
And also possibly, if you could bring up the first image, planet Earth.
Meh.
Dun, dun, dun.
I've seen better planets.
Yeah.
I have too.
When we elected Donald Donaldovich Trump, we sent a clear message that we're going to grab the environment by the pussy. His cabinet picks have been a horror show, including among their ranks an anti-public school activist to run the public schools, conspiracy nuts in charge of intelligence, bankers in charge of regulating business, and a goddamned oil executive for Secretary of State. Are you shitting me? Truly, this is the dream team of awful. It's Cobra. Basically, he's nominated Cobra. For instance, we have a
because that would be an improvement.
Oh my God, I would pay for the mask.
Yeah,
so, pro-torture Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo to head the CIA.
Do you think he's
Jeff Sessions, who was too racist to be a federal judge, but just racist enough to be a senator from Alabama, to Attorney General. Andrew Pudsner, who runs Hardee's and fights minimum wage laws as labor secretary. Former Texas Governor Rick Perry to run the Department of Energy, who in 2011 promised to eliminate the Department of Energy, but also forgot its name. And most significantly for Earth, Scott Pruitt, who's a climate change denier who has sued the government to block limits on coal emissions to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. He is a true enemy of this institution that he's been tapped to lead, and he's basically an energy company hand puppet. I don't use that type of language. Usually I don't take it seriously, but in this case, according to a 2014 investigation by the New York Times, quote, energy lobbyists drafted letters for Mr. Pruitt to send on state stationery to the EPA, Interior Department, the Office of Management and Budget, and even President Obama, outlining the economic hardship of environmental rules regarding coal. He's a ventriloquist dummy. One of the first environmental policies that we heard about coming from the transition team of the damned came on November 22nd. This is when Trump spokesperson Bob Walker said that NASA's Earth Science Division was going to be shut down. According to the Guardian, Walker said that there was no need to do for NASA to do what he had previously described as, quote, politically correct environmental monitoring, which means that the words politically correct now officially have no meaning. To quote the article, quote, we see NASA in an exploration role in deep space research, Walker told The Guardian. Earth-centric science is better placed at other agencies where it is their prime mission. The focus, they say, will shift to exploring the solar system. They seem to forget, of course, that the Earth is in the solar system.
Wait,
and also,
what?
It's
the center of it, though.
No, wait, because we're like the center, and everything else is out there,
circling around us in perfect circles and on epicycles.
Well, they're not
right. So
ellipsoid, but
the thing is that they don't have a fucking clue about is that the Earth is the benchmark against which all other planetary processes are measured and understood. This is the one place in the solar system where we can see things happening close up on geological timescales, where we can see the atmospheric processes at work. In much the same way that we take advantage of having the sun nearby and we study its processes, we use that to understand what's going on these stars that we can't resolve. Right?
Going back all the way to 6,000 years.
all the way. Did you see my? Can you see the dates of the Earth?
Oh no, I can't.
It's 4000
okay.
BC to 2016.
Yeah.
Yay.
Because I'm funny.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I don't
So-
find this stuff funny anymore.
No, this
I
is
don't
not. This is serious
It's
shit.
depressing the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So according to Walker, quote, I believe the climate research is necessary, but it's been heavily politicized, which has undermined a lot of the work that researchers have been doing. Mr. Trump's decisions will be based upon solid science, not
there you go.
politicized science. The Guardian says that, quote, this would mean the elimination of NASA's world-renowned research into temperature, ice, clouds, and other climate phenomena. NASA's network of satellites provide a wealth of information on climate change. Now, in much the same way that the CDC can't study the health effects of gun violence by law, this prohibition on climate science, I suspect, is the first move that'll make it harder to make informed decisions about climate. But that's not all. Another disturbing bit of news came from the transition team at the Department of Energy.
Yeah.
They sent the administration there a questionnaire with over 70 questions. And these types of surveys are important so that the incoming admins can see, what the scope of what's going on in real time, what's happening at the place. Questions about personnel who had worked on climate change. Or who had helped put together climate change standards and definitions, or who had expertise in climate change.
Who attended climate change conferences.
Yeah.
Who went to conferences, Are you now or have you ever been a climate scientist? Oddly, the wonks noticed that there were no questions about nuclear weapons, the principal charge of the agency. It's almost like they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Really?
To their credit, the EPA sent back the following reply. If you could put up the next minute image, please. So, yeah.
Yourself for the cactus.
It was really much more impressive with the full rollout and with the Disney theme music and everything. It was pretty spectacular. But anyway, so these changes come at a bad time. This year, if you bring up the next image, saw a startling jump in the amount of polar ice that's been lost.
Yep.
And I saw a version of of this where they showed the standard deviations for like the last, I don't know, since 1980, I think. They in a shaded area above and below the blue line, it was shaded gray, and it only intersected with the standard deviations in one little tiny point along the graph, and that means that the whole year is an outlier, basically. I mean, it's really big.
One standard deviation, no. Usually, it's
two standard deviations.
Two to three, depending on what you're studying, are outliers. But the fact that it barely even reaches a standard deviation is really freaking disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like now you can say that maybe El Nino has something to do with it because that'll give you more ice, or it might give you a bigger ice melt. But yeah. So this is disturbing stuff. So what responses have been put out there that did not involve cactuses? Well, recognizing that the Republican Party represents the most dire threat to the continuation of life on the planet in so many ways, most of the signatory countries to the Paris Climate Agreement, which came into effect last month, have said that they will follow through on their commitments, unlike the deadbeat Republicans. Many states and cities have signaled that they'll enforce local climate legislation, and this seems to be a route by which a lot of this type of stuff will be passed. I mean, I can see Republicans saying, well, that's how it should have always been done. At least, people who are not friends of the federal government, they said, well, it should be states doing it. Okay, well.
Well, they'll force states to do it. I know California will continue to overdo it.
Yeah.
Some states would not.
Yeah,
it's true. Bill Gates announced the establishment of a multi-billion-dollar fund to research clean energy. Barb, I don't know if you have any opinions about Bill Gates and the various windmills he tilts at.
Yes, I have lots of opinions about it. Good for him that he set up a fund. Whether or not it does anything that's actually worthy of being done is another question. It depends on how much he gets involved with it.
Yeah.
Because he thinks he knows everything about everything, and I'm sorry, he does not.
You can also take individual action, reducing your carbon footprint. But lastly, it seems that some climate scientists are taking some pretty extraordinary steps to protect climate data itself. I can't believe I have to say this, but in much the same way that museum curators hid paintings from the Taliban, these climate scientists are protecting their decades of climate data by putting it out of the reach of the book burners, publishing raw data to the web and backing it up on non-governmental sites. This is really quite dire. Climate's going to be the defining challenge for politicians. You could bring up the next image. Here they are debating the issue. The entire machinery of the most powerful nation on Earth is now actually going out of its way to thwart climate science in absurd ways. So this is not a happy report. Yeah, but this is book burning is what they're scared of, and it has just gotten out of control.
I was thinking maybe they could put their data in that, that seed bank in Norway. It's deep under the permafrost or something.
There's no more permafrost, Steve.
Oh, yeah, damn. I mean, next to the palm trees.
I was going to suggest we launch it into space, but, that's not going to happen. Because wouldn't that be a climate project? I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be too much.
Put in a public school, no one will ever look there.
We could.
There won't be any public schools.
Oh yeah,
and you can thank Bill Gates for part of that.
I can tell you like him a lot.
It's not that I dislike him. It's just that I am really sick of people.
Frustrated with him. Yeah.
I'm very frustrated with people just holding him up as, well, Bill Gates is behind it, therefore it must be a good thing. No, it's not necessarily a good thing.
I've heard that about Oprah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because you have money and just because you're generous with it, which good for him that he is. I admire him for doing that. And I admire him for using his money to better the world in the ways that he thinks it needs to be bettered. Unfortunately, he's wrong about a lot of things, and his weight actually has some effect on the things that he puts it on. And that's not always a good thing. And education is one of those areas. He's going to help. He has helped in the push to basically destroy the public education system. And our new DOE secretary is just going to put that nail in that coffin with vouchers and all that crap. Thanks, Bob. Thanks so much.
So I'm going to play the funeral dirge as we leave now. Are you done, Bob?
Yeah, that's what I got. We've got
the
flat earthers are in fucking charge.
Yeah. Just as an interesting conversation that might, I don't know if this will make us feel any better. Listening to a lot of us, in quotes, talk about what's happening right now. If you didn't understand the topics, if you didn't understand the nuances, to an outsider, we could sound a lot like others sounded 8 years ago.
Uh-huh.
This is interesting. One of the things that I've been thinking about is, and it has to do with conspiracy theories, right? Because that's what I think about when I'm my brain is doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if conspiracy theories are really a kind of a defensive strategy that the party out of power uses to survive. It gives them someone to kick back hard against. It gives them a sense of purpose despite powerlessness. It's convenient. It gets people emotionally fired up and gets them, focusing their energies. I don't know. I was thinking about that after George W. Bush left office. A lot of the people on the left who were into 9/11 conspiracy theories kind of gave them up because I guess they were no longer useful for them. They didn't really need to support. You had a couple of kooks who still held on to them. And I'd wondered if that's part of something bigger, if it's part of a...
Thank heavens people like Alex Jones, took up that banner.
Yeah.
With the 9/11
because it might have died out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And found a way that it was Obama's fault.
Yeah, I don't know why I just wanted to ask that question because sitting here listening, well, in particular this conversation about Trump's cabinet and all these people that are so obviously wrong to us that no conflict of interest is and no that these people are going to want to keep the agendas that they've been following before they had this power. But the way we talk about it, it's the same way that conspiracy theorists talk about it because they know they're right too.
Yeah.
And they see things that no one else sees. And like, well, this person is clearly going to just do crazy.
Take our guns.
Well, we don't know what they're going to do, but we do know what the qualifications of these people are. We can't talk about their qualifications. We can talk about their experiences. We can talk about what they have said they would like to do.
Yeah.
And we know that it conflicts with our ideology. And so saying that these things are bad, that's where we're going to have butt heads with people with other ideologies. And actually, I'm an independent, so I tend to share a lot of ideologies, especially with my liberal friends. But I also tend to disagree with them on a lot of things too. My concern has more to do with things like conflicts of interest, which are not ideology. They are problems, and they are problems that get downplayed by that you can't come back with, well, that's a good thing, because it's clearly not a good thing. What you can come back with, what they come back with then is, well, Hillary would have been worse.
Yeah.
Or, well, that's not so important. Well, better that than something else.
Emails.
There are some serious, emails. There is some serious, conflicts of interest here, and that's my biggest problem with the upcoming administration is that this is not about the American people. It's not about our government. There's no respect for how our government works. It's all about what I want, and that's who Trump is.
Yeah. What I can get out of this.
Yeah. Well, I think people saw that. But they didn't care because they thought what he wanted was going to help them. Yeah. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help the people who voted for him, much less the rest of us. And that's where I get tied into the knots about it.
I guess that's the difference. Is that it's not an us and them. It's that we are clearly I don't know. It just seems like it's clear to us that even the people who support him aren't gonna benefit from this. So yeah. Anyway, I'm still bummed. So there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're over our hour. I'm sorry I came home. I was actually working on Real Robots today, so I got home late and just in time to do this. And glad I got here in time to do this. But
you have no robots?
I don't have robots. Bob even sent me an article like the last minute that was kind of interesting. I didn't have a chance to read it, so I'm not going to bring it up.
Save it for next week.
Yeah. But
sometime in January.
Trust me, even though I don't have a robot thing, they are coming to get you. So that is not a conspiracy
Okay.
theory.
Well, that's
It's pretty
a belief,
consistent.
really.
Amazon started
At this point,
their
yeah.
drone delivery.
Really?
They've always
Where?
supposedly done that.
No, they started. They have 2 customers that they're testing the system on in England.
2 customers.
I know
or
it
2
sounds like
orders?
they're gonna have to order lots of shit under 5 pounds. But
they've been doing test runs of stuff all over. But I'll have to read that article and see what the deal is with that. It's a good place to test that though, because they don't have as strong their organization that controls that stuff is a little more open than ours.
Under 500 feet, I think, is the height or something. But they have these mechanized tracks that the little drones come out of the warehouse, and they lift off, and then they apparently land in a field, and you have to go fucking find it.
Really?
There's a Gadget Man where he gets something delivered by drone.
Mm.
Huh.
That's a good show.
Not in America. Anyway, we don't have a trivia question. We actually had a trivia question. We just didn't want to tell it to you. But amazingly enough, the question was answered correctly by Alex Murdoch, and the answer is
what are the odds? It must be crazy.
The answer was Pocky Sticks. Unfortunately, he didn't also give us the question, so sorry, Alex, you get no credit.
Ooh.
Okay. No one guessed what's behind me. Well, actually, no. There was one guess. Where is it? Where's the guess? Guessing the movie from A Brief Glimpse. That holiday favorite, Operation Petticoat. No, I'm sorry. It is not Operation Petticoat.
Let Barb guess.
But I think Barbara knows this one.
I thought I did, and then I second guessed myself because
What did you think it was?
I thought it was 1941.
It is 1941.
It is.
Congratulations.
I saw the Jaws, the girl in Jaws, and immediately thought Jaws, but I knew you wouldn't do that, so I thought 1941.
Yeah. Yay. So I am completely convinced that Barb knows every sinking movie that I could possibly throw on the TV. So
Yeah.
No, we just have similar taste in movies.
that's probably part of it too. Anyway, we have any announcements this week? I don't see any on the sheet.
Everyone should have themselves a merry little Christmas.
Yes. Or a happy holiday.
If you celebrate it.
If you want to be peaceful about it. We're not going to have a show for the next 2 weeks, probably. I don't think so. The next week is a tough week for everybody. And I think the week after that is pretty tough. So we'll see you in the new year. But before that, let's read some of our books. Who's got a book?
I had one.
Yeah.
I had one, and then I closed my iPad.
I'm going to do Bob first. We'll go in reverse order this time.
Okay.
Me first?
Yes, do it.
Atlantic City got its start in a quick getaway accessible from Philadelphia by train in 2 hours. Within a few years, transit times have been cut to just over an hour. A visit to the shore might not seem like such a big deal now, but in the long years before the invention of air conditioning, paying a few dollars to get out of the inner city heat and bask in the ocean breeze was about as good as it got for middle and working class Philadelphians.
Who were immediately eaten by those horrible, horrible flies.
It's
so gross.
Exsanguinated.
Those green-headed felon flies.
That was worse than the barnacles.
No,
Eve,
they really aren't.
No, read. Go.
Thomas Betson was a monk at Sion Abbey in Middlesex. He seems to have been a pious man, but also a prankster and a dabbler in magic. And his notebook includes instructions on how to perform various tricks. Take a fine hair from the head of a woman, for example, and attach it to a hollowed-out egg. You'll be able to move the egg about, holding the other end of the hair in your hand, and no one will see the hair because of its thinness. You can even hang the egg in the house, and, quote, many people will think it is being held up by nothing at all, unquote. Or use a bit of wax to attach one end of a hair to a coin. Pull on the other end of the hair, and the coin will move, and many people will think it is done by magical art.
Wow. Barbara?
The trail goes through unburned timber the entire way. About halfway up the hill, go left or right on the loop trail, either way with no added difficulty, and go either way with no added difficulty, and take the other route on the way down. The right fork is the most gradual but longest route to the top, but well-designed switchbacks make the 800-foot climb seem fairly easy, whichever fork you choose.
When all else fails, give up and go to the library. Bob, what's your book?
My book was Boardwalk Playground, The Making, Unmaking, and Remaking of Atlantic City by David G. Schwartz.
Okay. Eve?
Magic in the Middle Ages by Richard Keffer. And that was magic for entertainment purposes.
Barbara?
Mine was Best Easy Day Hikes, Yellowstone Park.
Yay!
And I was describing the elephant back loop, which is not far from the place where that guy got eaten by the grizzly last year.
I'm trying to get the cover to come up on. Oh, there it is. Anybody got a guess where that quote, that little tiny quote, came from?
No, it's too short.
No? You laughed like you knew it. It's from because I started another book this week, and I haven't watched the TV series yet, but I want to. But I want to read the book first.
Yeah, understood.
Yep. And the cover's just gone away. Dang it. Anyway, it's Stephen King. And it is a book about history repeating itself. The date, it may look
yes,
11/22/63. The basic premise is time travel and Kennedy assassination.
we read that this summer.
Yeah,
in the car.
So far it's good. I mean, I like Stephen King. So
much better. Don't bother with the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's got that guy.
It's got James Franco, and he's terrible.
I know.
And yeah, I know. It's really disappointing.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's just pretty disappointing.
Oh well.
Well,
I'm enjoying the book. Anyway, early on in his escapades in the past, he's trying to find someone, and that's the statement he makes. And I just thought it stood out in my mind. When all else fails, give up and go to the library.
Yep.
It's solid thinking there.
Yeah, as long as we still have them.
Yeah.
In that note, I'm going to end it. I'm going to pinch it off. Here you go. Thank you all for watching and contributing your pieces. Ben was very active on the YouTube channel. I'm sorry I didn't respond to everything, but thanks for watching, Ben, as well. 2016, yes, absolutely. There's the logo, and there's the music. Waiting for my notes. Purchase Skeptics is something, something, and something, and something, something. I'm going to get to it in a minute. The music won't end. Anyway. What's the Harm Net? Skeptical Humanities, myself, I Speak Anywhere, Doubtful News. Logo was designed by Sarah May, SarahMay.com, and our music was by Music Mission. And I hope you understood that. And go dancing around.
If not, go to another episode and listen to the end of that.
Bye.